What's up, beautiful people? Welcome to the Joy of Living show with Dr. Joy. And today, our topic is on marital agreements. No, I'm not going to be the one to discuss it. I have an expert, and her name is Tanya Helfin. And actually, she was a guest on the Dr. Joy show, the TV show, years ago. But this topic is so important that I've asked her to come back and share information with the Joy of Living viewers. So, but before we get started, you know what we do on the Dr. Joy show and the Joy of Living show? We take 3 deep breaths. Are you ready? Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Last one. Inhale, exhale. How do you feel? I know I feel great. Tanya Helpin, thank you for being a guest on the Joy of Living with Dr. Joy podcast. So, I know that you are a partner with Schenck, probably didn't pronounce it correctly, Schenck Price Smith and King LLP. Would you tell us what your law firm does, please?
The name is Schenck. The way that you pronounce it is either Schenck Price or Schenck Price. Either one is fine.
Price.
So, but, it's my name is people call me, they move my letters around also. So anyhow, it is a very old law firm that has been that was established about 112 years ago. And there are between 80 and 90 attorneys here handling various types of law. There's a very large and wonderful estate planning department, handling trusts and estates and estate litigation. We represent many school boards, hospitals, and we do commercial litigation, land use, all kinds of wonderful things that people can use. And as I said, it's been around for a long time because there's good lawyers here, and I am proud to be a partner with many of these lawyers.
Okay. Now, when you were a guest on the Dr. Joy show, Your Prescription for Total Wellness, that was the television show I had a long time ago. Did you? I don't think you talked about marital agreements. You talked probably about trusts. Am I correct?
I honestly,
Don't
at
remember.
the time, I think we probably talked about many different things. Right, my practice is the matrimonial practice here at Schenck
Okay.
Price, and we may have talked about the different experiences during divorce. I'm not sure if we talked about trust, but
Oh,
today, I thought this would be a good subject.
oh yes, for sure. So let's talk about your role as partner and your vision for moving forward. And congratulations on attaining partner. I don't know when that happened, but congratulations on that. That's a big accomplishment.
Thank you. Yeah, I had my own practice for many years, 27 years. And basically, my team that I couldn't perform without, and I moved here to this firm, very close to where my prior office was here in Morris County. My vision in coming here and has always been to provide clients with top shelf 5-star service. And we dearly, all of my staff and I care about our clients. We want to provide them with accurate information, good customer service, politeness, promptness, all of the things that make any business experience positive. So we try and focus on that. And of course, provide excellent matrimonial services.
Now, why? I mean, Tanya, you could have chosen any branch of law. Why matrimonial services?
Honestly, I didn't choose it, it chose me. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, it years ago when I started practicing, I had my own practice when I was quite young. I did many things. I did real estate, I did municipal court, I did personal injury, And I briefly worked for a family lawyer beforehand. And it just is the area of law that kept coming back to my office and kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I guess I am good at it along with my team. So that's how we ended up in this field exclusively.
Oh, okay. So let's focus on those marital agreements. Most people would know about prenups, divorce agreements in case, a marriage doesn't make it and they want to, the parties want to separate. But I did a little bit of research and I know that there's several others. Could you elaborate on those?
Sure. So there's a spectrum. So we have the prenups, which are agreements that people can make before they get married, and it can address support, it can address assets, it can address what happens on death. So there's many different things that the prenups can address. And in New Jersey, we have what's called the Uniform Prenuptial Agreement Act. So
Mm-hmm.
there's parameters, it has to be in writing, there has to be full disclosure, and it can't be what's called unconscionable, or basically very unfair at the time of the agreement. We have the other types, we have mid-marriage agreements. So, sometimes people in the middle of the marriage have situations for various reasons why it makes sense for them to make another agreement. They're looked at differently. There is no uniform statute for mid-marriage agreements, and the courts look at those agreements very, very, very carefully to make sure that they were fair at the time that there was the agreement and fair at the time of the divorce, if there's a divorce. Because obviously, if somebody wants their marriage to stay together and they're being pressured to enter into an agreement, that's a problem. So,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
so it's a mid-marriage agreement. Nowadays, we have what are called cohabitation agreements, where people don't want to be married. A lot of people don't want to be married, but at the same time, they want their rights to be documented, because in New Jersey, if you live together, you really don't have rights. It used to be palimony, and there's different nuances to this, but now the safe way of handling things is with a cohabitation agreement. So you don't get married, but you can say, on death, I'm going to give you this, or this is the support, or these are properties. Different things you can address in the cohabitation agreement. And of course, there's marital settlement agreements, at the ends of a marriage, where people enter into an agreement based on, again, property, support, kids, things of that nature. So there's a bunch of different things.
So, Tanya, who do you recommend to put these agreements together? Like, for instance, prenups. Do you recommend everyone should have a prenup or just a certain group of people? Explain, please.
You know, I'm in, I'm not, I don't, obviously our office prepares all of these. And when I got married, I was married and divorced.
Mm-hmm.
When I got married, I didn't have a prenup.
Yeah.
Okay? A lot of people don't. And I got married when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah, we didn't either. We don't
Right.
prenup. Yeah, we're married 37 and a half years.
Fantastic. That I'm very happy to hear that. That's wonderful.
Well, thank you, but it's a lot of work. Anyway,
So,
but go ahead.
so it's people with, people who have money already, or people who it's a second marriage, or, having been divorced already. So if you have kids and you want to lay out a plan where your kids are going to get some, make sure your kids get, but then the other person gets something.
Right.
Um, any of those situations, or, typically we have somebody, or not typically, sometimes we have somebody who's very, very wealthy, and then you have somebody who isn't. So you want to set up parameters for those things,
Right.
all kinds of situations like that.
What about if you have children, grown children, and the reason why I'm asking this question is because we do have grown children. One of our sons is married, and they took care of that. But then we have another son. But we have a lot of friends, right, that have children, and the conversation sometimes has been, we would want our children to establish a prenup with their partner or soon to be partner, but they don't know how to actually have that conversation. Is there anything, any advice that you have for, say, that young person or that person getting married that can actually safeguard even the parents' assets?
Well, okay, so you're saying that so they'll inherit their parents' assets.
Yes.
Right. So many of those folks do set up prenups. And they also often do trusts. So these are some of the things that we do here in this firm. And that's why I joined this firm so that we could coordinate these efforts. So
Okay.
if you have parents, wealthier parents that have money for the children,
Mhm.
they can set up trusts, and then that is a protective measure. But then we also do prenups. What happens a lot of times, there's a very famous case called Tannen, where a lot of times the parents will give money to the kids during the marriage, just to help them out all the
Right.
time. So then, God forbid the divorce occurs, the person who isn't the child says, well, you're going to keep getting that money and we should, be entitled to that money because it was a money stream and all of those other things.
Oh,
And there are very specific rules regarding whether that money can be considered in the divorce or it's not, because that's in the discretion of the parents to give
that's
the
right.
money or not. So
Hmm.
yeah, we work with those issues all the time.
Oh, okay. So a mid-marriage agreement, that's a new one. I've never heard of that. Why,
Yeah.
yeah, why would that even come up? If you're married 10 years and now you want to do an agreement for the rest of the marriage?
So we've had situations, for example, where there was a prenup or there was a marriage. And you know what? People break up, like they really come to the point of either, you know, getting a divorce, separating, whatever it is, there is some sort of a breakdown in the marriage.
Hmm.
And a lot of times, as I'm sure you know, unfortunately, money is one of the reasons for the breakdown.
Oh,
What
yeah.
is it? Money, sex, children, those are the three reasons, three most common reasons why people break up. And so if they want to reconcile, like I've had several situations where, okay, they had this situation, now they want to reconcile and they're more stabilized.
Yes.
They're like, okay, we definitely want to reconcile, but we really need to work out this money situation. Either one person feels diminished and they need something more, the other person feels being taken advantage of, whatever it is. So we can adjust that situation to hopefully give people a greater level of comfort at that point, fully arm's length, fully with lawyers, so that they can now have a new plan going forward where
Okay.
they're more comfortable and it helps, hopefully it helps the marriage go forward.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for explaining that. So, how you mentioned the word fair when you were describing the roles and responsibilities of your law firm and what you do as partner. How can you determine if an agreement is fair? Air quotes.
So the first thing is disclosure.
Mm.
And that's one of those things that is a constant in the marriage breakup or marriages, and then in these agreements and in my process, where people really don't even know what the other person has. Happens all the time. And so people come in for a divorce, for example, and they say, well, we have this house, we have this, and they don't know really what's the 401k, what's the income, really what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I have other couples, for example, where they kind of make the same amounts of money. They don't really know what the assets are. And, you know, there's rules, there's laws about division of property and things like that. So, in order for something to be fair, truly, there should be disclosure of what everybody has. Everybody has to put their information on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Then, once that happens, both parties have knowledge of the facts.
Right.
Then I or another lawyer can guide the person regarding, what are the parameters that you would get under the law so that, you know the law
Mm-hmm.
and what that looks like as fairness. But then people also have to feel that it is fair.
Right.
So sometimes you have clients that want more than they're ever going to get under the law. I have to be truthful and go, you're never getting that. That's not happening. And then you have other clients who really want to shortchange themselves, or right, they just want to go away, whatever, they've had enough. And so you have to, my job is to explain to them, this is what your right is. So to give an example, I have one party that's got $1 million of assets. I have another party that has 200,000, or let's say $500,000 of assets. Okay.
Right.
And all acquired during the marriage, typically those assets would be equalized.
Mm-hmm.
So each would walk away with 750.
Yes.
Sometimes, they both have good incomes and they're totally fine on their own because of their own value system, walking away, not taking any more money from the other person, not equalizing it.
Right.
Right? So is that fair? Well, they knew what was available to them.
Mm-hmm.
I've instructed them, this is your right under the law. But if
Okay.
at the end of the day, they've decided not to take it because this is how they feel about their partner and what they want to do, I don't think there's anything unfair about that, right? Because it was of their own free will.
So fairness is really relative
Completely.
under the law. And just so that we're clear with the viewers and the listeners of the podcast, your clients are all New Jersey based?
Right. I am licensed in both New Jersey and New York. However, I am blessedly very busy in New Jersey. So I don't do New York work. I send it out.
Yeah. Okay. So what is the number of years? Is there a year statute or something, a marriage, number of years of marriage in New Jersey that would qualify for the other person, like one person to um I guess gain some of the assets? Is it like 5 years, 10 years, 15?
So I think so. There's two basic or three basic financial concepts, but the two main ones are there's equitable distribution, and then there's alimony, and then of course there's child support. So that's the third financial. So
Right.
equitable distribution is basically division of the assets, and it's division of the assets that were what's called acquired during the marriage. So
Okay.
a marriage that's a year, a marriage that's 5 years, a marriage that's 20 years, whatever it is, it's whatever came in during that period. And that's typically from the date of the marriage till the date of the complaint for divorce.
Okay.
Or sometimes people do cutoff agreements, like instead of filing in the court, they'll do an agreement. So it's whatever was acquired in those two goal lines. So whatever it is, that's subject to equitable distribution. Now, it doesn't mean that it's always 50-50. A good portion of the time, it's 50-50 of whatever came in during that period of time.
Oh, okay.
That's separate from alimony, which is support if it's necessitated and it's found under the law between one person and another. And that's also there's like time limitations on that, if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, the time limitation. I remember those discussions sitting at, baseball games, football games, basketball games, and you can only imagine, you can hear the chatter, okay, of women talking, saying, yeah, when I get to 10 years, I'm done. That's what they would say. So I didn't know really if it was a minimum number of years. Okay, so how can you avoid, or what advice do you have for the listeners and the viewers to avoid pitfalls and mistakes?
In agreements.
Yes.
Okay, just all right. So, couple things. I think it's very important to do that disclosure. So, a prenup, for example, is not even valid without it. And people feel really uncomfortable about they feel very vulnerable about putting their money information out on the table, but
Yeah.
it's critical. And the same thing during a mediation, for a divorce, same thing for mid-marriage agreements. That always is one of the issues. So critically important to have that disclosure. Now, people, you'll generally feel, okay, and that's not exact. You'll generally feel if the information is correct or within the ballpark of what's appropriate.
Mhm.
Truth is, in my business, some people absolutely lie about their information. So
So
then,
how does that come up? Is that like a discovery phase or?
exactly. So we sort of have the phase one disclosure, which is called, in our world, is called the case information statement. In New York, it's called the net worth statement, which is like a snapshot of the income, assets, the liabilities, the budget. You know, it's a snapshot of the person's, of the couple's finances.
Mhm.
Now, if somebody's completely unaware of what's going on, we have to do some searches. We either have to ask for all the data behind it, we have to do subpoenas, things of that nature.
Right.
You know, because again, unfortunately, we do have some people that do lie. Others don't, you know, and you can, there's things that make sense. Like if people have W-2s, if they're just regular W-2 earners, there's just so much you could do about it. It's another thing if somebody owns business,
That's right.
and so forth. So again, it's important to get the information. A lot of times people want to waive it. It's because divorce, the reality is divorce is exhausting,
Yeah.
can be exhausting, and it can be expensive. But you really have to weigh and balance whether it's worth just, you know, not doing it versus spending a little time and money getting the real numbers, because at least you feel like you know what's going on. And I've had, unfortunately, a few cases recently where I took over and the proper discovery wasn't done, and you find things later.
Oh,
So, you know, I kind of instruct my clients to do that. So that's the first part, to get a fair agreement, is to know, first of all, know what's going on. The second thing is you shouldn't feel incredibly pressured. So sometimes, unfortunately, prenups, people will book their wedding halls and then they're going and doing their prenups, you know, a month before the wedding. That's absurd. That should not be done that way.
so when should they do it?
When they decide, my advice is when they decide to get married and they're sort of in the ballpark of, you know, like that, do it. So then it's not going to be under duress.
Okay.
It's not going to mess up your wedding plans. People do fight during prenup preparation.
Yeah.
My personal goal is not to function as a divorce lawyer in a prenup. My
Oh,
goal is to educate the clients. I have them talk with each other about how they feel about it. I make it almost an exercise, a good exercise for their marriage, where, you know, they have to talk about these things.
right. Yeah.
And so,
I can only imagine that that could be tense
right.
in a lot of cases. So, but okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
And start early with that type of planning.
absolutely, start early with the disclosure, start early with the planning, because then it's not going to be a giant pressure cooker. You know, somebody, you know, that's what happens is people come back afterwards and say, you know, I signed it as I was, you know, trying my veil on.
Oh.
That's not how this go, you know, and people do, because they feel like they're embarrassed if they cancel a wedding. They, you know, don't know
Hmm.
what else to do. It all kinds of things. So give yourself space to do this. Even if it is uncomfortable, don't push it off. Do the discomfort earlier to see if you can get through it properly. Same thing with divorces. It's interesting. The courts, look, we want to get divorces done. People don't want to languish in the divorce system.
Right.
And sometimes you're literally sitting in a courthouse on a bench writing up an agreement for people because the judge says, let's get it done today. And you're, you know, you're writing up things. Um, I try as a rule not to put it through, like, on the one hand, I want to get the deal done. On the other hand, I'll say, listen, let's write it up. Feel, you know, let's see what happens. And then, like, you could sign it tomorrow or you could sign it 2 days from now. That's not going to make a huge difference. At least you can go home, think about it, and then come back, having considered it intelligently, because those rushed emotional things, I've had to deal with a lot of those blow ups as well. Wrong words put in, things like that.
But okay, so Tanya, this is a touchy subject with prenups. What happens if one person wants it, the other person doesn't? Have you seen that?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, and I had a case like that, and the guy that wanted it was he got a prenup, but it was what I wouldn't consider to be fair. He was really pressured into it also. Um, that's a factor in the marriage.
Yeah.
If the negotiation about the prenup and the money can't be resolved, that's a red flag.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ding, ding, ding.
That's a red flag.
So I guess is your advice that everybody that's getting married, and if they have something, even if they're in their 20s, right? Um, because their parents may have assets, um, that they have an agreement before walking down the aisle.
I don't know. I'm going to be truthful. If there's substance that, first of all, if somebody wants it, you
Hmm.
have to address it. If one of the two people want it, you have to address it. I think it's a personal thing. I think as I said, as people get older and have more stuff or have children, it's really important
Yeah.
to line things up. A tip and a tool is that if you choose not to have a premarital agreement, if you keep records of whatever you had premaritally, okay, so you can have a baseline. You have your data of this is what I had prior to the marriage. And if you don't commingle that with other assets, and that
Right.
includes your income, like if you're earning during the marriage, if you take that money and you put that into the separate account, that is what's called transmutes the account. So that messes it up or
Yeah.
commingles money. But
Yeah.
if you have something prior to the marriage and you want to protect that without a prenup, you just
Hmm.
have to keep track of it and make sure it doesn't get messed in with other things. That's one way of doing it. I don't think there's anything wrong with a prenup, but sometimes people really don't have that much to begin with that it's worthy to do it.
Right. Well, let's now jump to your book as we wrap up. 20 great tips for a successful divorce. Ooh. So what are your top, we have like 5 or 6 minutes. What are your
Sure.
top three tips? Can you share that and then share where we could get the book?
Sure. Um,
You know what? If you don't want it, because it's 20 tips, maybe share two, maybe one or two of your tips.
so I wrote this book several years ago to really help people get their arms around the process because it's scary.
Hmm.
And one of my clients said it feels like a salad spinner that you're going into.
Right.
And and I think it helps people when they come in with these scared feelings and the unknown, if they have some directions to go in. Okay, you need to do this and this. Okay, so one of the very first directions, well, before that, what I advise is counseling, because I think people shouldn't just give up before they really try the counseling.
Okay.
Give it a full effort so you feel like you've done that. And a lot of times the counselors can even help people have more amicable divorces because they can soften the situations. So that's one tip. Then once, if you're going into the process, very important to be financially organized, prepared, and knowledgeable.
Hmm.
So either party, whether it's the one that handles all the money or the one that doesn't handle all the money, you have to do the best you can to get your tax returns together, your credit card statements together, the values of your homes, 401ks, gather all your data. These are tasks that are going to be necessary in the divorce. And it gives you kind of direction and purpose to put it together so you understand what the financial situation looks like.
Okay.
So that's, preparing yourself financially is one of my chapters, and it's really important. And the
Okay.
other is, honestly, most people, I don't care who it is, and I represent people from all walks of life, CEOs, moms that stay at home, athletes, all of it. Okay. Most of us, and I've been through it as well, are very emotional, and an exhausting process. And I suggest that people go for some therapy. There's nothing, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you.
Like that.
You need that emotional
Mm-hmm.
backup during this process
Mm-hmm.
to stay calm. Just
Right.
like you started with the breathing, it's really important for people to try and stay calm through this difficult process. So those are, I'm going to give you the 3 tips.
And I like all three, and I'm sure it's a great book. 20 Great Tips for a Successful Divorce. Author is my guest, Tanya Helfand. And where can we get that book? Is it on Amazon?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Go to Amazon and get the book. All right. So, next to last question. I know you mentioned that divorces can be expensive, and I'm not going to ask you your rate because that's between you and your clients. But when people are thinking about it, they should have what should they be thinking about in terms of the total cost for the divorce in terms of attorneys? A range, a broad range.
Uh, that's kind of tough, because people come to the table with different assets and different complexities and
So
different
it all
problems.
depends on what they
It
need.
depends. I mean, we don't, unfortunately, lawyers most of the time don't function like physicians where there's insurance. So you do have to out of pocket money. It
Right,
does usually cost several $1,000s, depending on your case.
right.
I suggest that people try and find a lawyer that seems businesslike,
Hmm.
honest, and is looking to help you and your spouse resolve fairly and intelligently. Okay, that's the way. The ways you save money are, as I said before, being prepared with your finances.
Right,
So that if you can bring it all into the lawyer, you're going to save money as opposed to the lawyer trying, on a wild goose chase, trying to figure out where your stuff is.
right.
And then yourself who feels honest and who feels like they're trying to whip up the problems or the fire
Hmm.
for you, because that's only going to cost you more money. So
Okay,
the more you can, stay even, it's going to be a little cheaper. And, you should know, your own budget and what it's going to look like. And your lawyer can't give you an exact figure, but give you an idea.
okay. That's great advice. So how can people in New Jersey contact you?
Well, you see on the back here, the name of
Oh,
the,
I see. Yes. Okay, so they
okay,
can just Google that. They could Google you. What's your phone
absolutely.
number?
973-631-7850.
Okay, great. Great. That's what I needed that for, just in case, because I have a lot of viewers and they come from all over. So the ones that are in New Jersey that could utilize your services can call you directly. Tanya, thank you very much
Thank
for
you very much.
being a guest on The Joy of Living with Dr. Joy. I wish you much, much success in your business, kind of, because then you deal
Right?
with people, yeah, at least on the prenup side. So then that way they can work together towards a happy marriage, right? So until next time, be blessed, stay healthy. See ya.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.